Okay, guys, welcome back, and we are continuing where we left off. And this just finishes off to let you know that you are ready and you're finished with that section of the core book with the hero expansion. Then comes a free play RPG expansion 2, which is that second book, which is this one. And essentially, this is going to dive into, like I said, really focusing on how you're building up your world, like the game master is building up his world. So it has the introduction, welcoming you back to the book, the world building, kind of letting you know what that is, what that consists of, you in all that kind of detail. NPCs, that gives you a basic list of basic characters to fill your world in a pinch. Your civilian, your cop, and they come with some weapons too. Your common thug, your soldier, your ninja. And you can change up these stats a little bit if you need to for certain characters, like maybe like, the mob boss or whatever the case is, or like the best cop or whatever the case is. Switch around some of the stats a little bit. But for the most part, if you just got to grab somebody at a whim, you could use these stats just to use on the run. These are some settings for your world building to kind of give you an idea of different settings you can have. You got post-apocalyptic, utopia, which is also a future, and let you know the time frame is the future. The setting is the climate. The setting climate, which is, like the dynamic of that scene, which is where it breaks into the whole paragraph of what it's like. But obviously, most of us know what that means. Post-apocalyptic, utopia, future paradise kind of situation, a fantasy situation, which is like ancient times. Some of it is, magical and fairy tale and all that kind of stuff like that. Space, future. That could be whether it's sci-fi future with unrealistic stuff or more realistic stuff, however you want to do it. Modern heroes time, which is like your typical, superhero kind of setting for the modern times, and it breaks down that, which is generally what most of this layout kind of pertains to. Then you have golden age hero, which says time frame 1940 to 1970. Maybe you want to do something like that, similar to the movies in The Incredibles, where it's kind of in that kind of older in time golden age, exactly how it says it. Then we have hero level settings, which tries to kind of give an idea for the GM when he's making setting of what do you want the players to be playing. Street level, which might be just a bunch of guys who either have like no powers, but they have good gadgets and good, combat skills and stuff like that. Or maybe they have a single power level and they're just trying to do things. And then here in italics, it kind of breaks down what level should match what street level is. And here it says class 3 maximum. If you want to do that, suggested power levels are as follows: class 3 maximum, meaning no one goes above a class 3, just to keep it within that street level. So they can kind of choose multiple types of powers, but they can't make any of them go above a class 3. Then you have, and it also says, certain powers you don't allow them to even purchase, which is at street level, someone would rarely have abilities like reality, manipulation and time manipulation, so you just wouldn't allow them to pay for those kind of things. Now you can if you want, but it's just a suggestion, a little guide. Mid superhuman level with its own suggestions, a high superhuman level with its kind of class level suggestions, and cosmic level, which says no restrictions at all. But this is just a guide, like I said, just to kind of help you get started, so you aren't taking on too much as a game master in the beginning, where you don't want to be overloaded. Weapons, it breaks down to weapons that we created to kind of, you can go off this basis. You can create your own weapons if you want, but here you can kind of say, I don't have time to make all that. I want to play with weapons that they have. Cool. So we have firearms, for example. We break it down into subsections. You have firearms, which we have a list of made up weapons. So nothing like name brand or whatever. If you're one of those guys who into guns and this and that, and you know the name of guns, you can kind of translate what you want over to here and build it up the way you want here. And in the finished game, we actually added a few more stuff to this. But here you have something called like the MP Cult. That's a machine gun. The MP Crew is another machine gun. The MP Cult is like a better version. The MP Crew is like a cheaper version. And then it'll explain here kind of who uses it. So here are the game statistics of the gun, its limitations, anything like that. Like this, the MP Cult here tells you its damage. It gets a +2 accuracy because it comes built in with a scope. It explains to you, I'll just read the basis of it. The MP Cult is a machine gun that comes in all black finish. The MP Cult comes standard with a scope attached increasing the accuracy, which is built into it here, which it says, but it tells you it here, increases the accuracy. The MP Cult supports full auto and semi-auto, and the full auto is the 2 shots, like I mentioned in the core rules, is 2 shots per action, so 2 kind of gunshots or 2 attacks in that action if they're related to the gunshot, or semi-auto, which is 1 shot. So you have that option to choose that. The reason why that comes into play is because the MP Crew, which is a cheaper gun, only has full auto. What's the problem with that? Well, say if you shoot a guy and it's in full auto, so you do 2 of those attacks in 1 action, but he dies on the first action. Maybe you knew he was getting weak and you wanted to go into semi-auto. Maybe you don't want to waste all your ammo. You don't have that option. That's a cheaper gun. So that's kind of why, things like that matter, and it gives it a little more depth in the way that we created these weapons. And like I said, you can create your own and give them more depth, give them more rules if you want, but this gives you a basis on how that works. It says must declare before making the attack. So that's referring to the full auto, semi-auto. Before you actually make the attack, you have to choose. Did you put it in semi-auto or full auto? If you put it in obviously full auto, you're wasting both rounds regardless of whether you hit the person, you didn't hit the person, or you killed the person. You still wasted that second shot because it was in full auto. This magazine size is 30 rounds, and this gun can support a red dot aim. So it doesn't come with one, but you could put one on it. And I don't know if that's the proper name. I call it a red dot aim. It is what it is. And then here you have in italics a little bit of what the weapon represents in-game universe, in that world. So here it says, for the MP Cult, this is the gold standard for professionals. It is quite expensive, even on the black market, so you will almost never find it in the hands of criminals. This high quality firearm comes standard with many higher end features and tends to never jam. Now, whether a gun jams or not, that's not like gonna be a play feature in it, but it's just kind of talking it into how it is inside that world. So, if you go to, like, say, a gun shop to go and purchase a weapon, the GM might say, the store guy, the clerk, the owner of the shop might say to you, hey, listen, you want that MP Cult? It's going to cost this much. We don't put prices here. I'll let the game master, whoever's playing, decide what they want to do. But we'll say, hey, that MP Cult is going to cost this much. Maybe I can show you this MP Crew. It's not as good. It sometimes jams. He might say, even though it's not going to necessarily depend on the game master, if he wants to make things where things jam, that's up to him. But we'll say, hey, listen, like, this gun, the MP Crew, costs a little less, but it doesn't have semi-auto option, but hey, it costs less, you know what I mean? And whatever the case is. So that's how you kind of play it up. And each gun has their own kind of little in-world reference in italics, and breaks down, like, the aspects of the gun. So MP Cult, MP Crew, you got the wingman and the sidekick. They're both this world's form of like a handgun, like a 9mm. Showstopper is a shotgun. Wildflower is like a grenade launcher. Mini Wild is like the grenade launcher attachment that would go on, like, say, a machine gun. You got other weapons here. Other weapons goes into throwing knives and breaks down. That can include ninja stars and things of that sort. The italics is still there underneath all these kind of things. Modern compound bow, which is the D10, in reference to when we went through weapon damage in the core book. And this is for whoever wants to make a superhero who has a bow and arrow. You then go into things like special arrows and some suggestions of special arrows, which some of these arrows incorporate powers from the power section. So that's kind of how they work, like things like explosives, poison arrows, cryo arrows, snare arrow, which would lock someone down like a web, armor piercing arrows, which work the same way as armor piercing bullets, giving a +1 or +2 depending on what type you have. A grapple arrow is just simply used for you to like a grappling hook. Sorry once again for the camera's out of if the book is out of frame any given time. I don't want to have a pulled back view because I feel like you guys can't see anything like this, so that's why. So I apologize for that. Bow staff. Now, obviously, a regular bow staff is going to be a D8, like any kind of large melee weapon. But here, it kind of breaks down for the purpose of, because this is all kind of really relating, all these weapons and everything's relating to the kind of superhero world. Or if you don't want to play a superhero expansion, you still just have access to these weapons. The breakaway bow and the kind of more like specialized bow. So what it'll say here is that, the bow staff is a pretty basic martial weapon. In recent years, it has been highly adopted by superheroes. A subcategory of the bow staff is the custom bow staff. Some examples of the custom bow staff are, and obviously, certain characters like blind superheroes may go around using these things. So that's why we kind of have this category. The breakaway bow, it starts as a whole staff as a D8, but breaks apart into two separate smaller ones, which are like smaller batons. You can say D6. Now, generally speaking, in this game, like anything that's maybe about over, like, say 2 feet is gonna be like maybe a D8. But generally speaking, if you want to say like it broke into a smaller size, that's a D6. Cool. You break it down, and you maybe want to give it to somebody. Maybe you have a partner that they don't have a weapon. You're like, here, you break your thing apart and say, take this, because we're fighting these guys, or whatever other kind of bow staff is. The idea is to let you say however you want to customize your bow staff. Go ahead, come up with an idea. See if your game master's cool with it. Here you got the grapple bow. It's a bow staff that also has a grappling hook in it for 50 feet long. So, maybe you need that to get around. And then the little context here that breaks down about bow staffs and how the basic one obviously is cheap, but these ones, getting someone to customize it can cost a lot. Maybe your game master is going to say, hey, it costs you a lot. Sometimes if I was a game master, I'd give a lot of basic weapons that are not super powered away for free, because you run out of it anyway, ammunition, this and that, whatever the case is. It's not a big deal, but that's up to your game master. Maybe he wants to give away free stuff, maybe he doesn't. Metal knuckles, standard shield, and breaks down to how a shield works inside this game. And if you want to actually make a powered shield that doesn't break, that would go into power weapons, which will go into another category, but it breaks that down. Equipment, some of the basic stuff: grappling hook, binoculars, armor, body armor, which is the same thing as like the flak jacket that I mentioned in the core rules. Utility belt is a way of holding things, or a backpack, because you're gonna have to have a way to hold things on your person. Power weapons. When you get into power weapons, you pretty much dive into you putting powers onto items. There are positive and negatives to this. The positive is that you can share your items and weapons with other people, so that way they would have those abilities as well. In the middle of battle, you want to throw them your weapon. If you're kind of good without your weapon, you could say, here, it's cool that I have it, but if you need it, or you need some help, then you could say, hey, here, take this weapon, I'm good without it, So that kind of breaks down the details of how the mechanics work, how you set it up, how you build it, and whatever the case is, how you, label it on your sheet of paper, on your character's paper and stuff like that. And some examples of some weapons, which you can also put them in your universe, but also, let you know how they work and how you'd be able to build it. Hero archetypes. This is fun. This is where you can either take the hero archetype exactly the way they are, if they fall into the point range that your game master has, or you can build your hero around that, so you have an idea to how to kind of build that and set it up. And here we kind of talk about what the hero type is and kind of how they work in the universe to a certain degree. So here you have the Paragon, who he is. We'll break down this real quick. So the Paragon, it gives a general description of what that is, and then it breaks it down into subcategories of each archetype. So here you have the Caped Paragon, the non-Caped Paragon. You have your Soldier Paragon. So here, the Caped Paragon you would think of as, your high-flying superhero with the long cape, your traditional I don't know if they're going to cause an issue for me saying these things out loud, certain characters' names, but, is your kind of Superman type of character. Your non-caped Paragon, think more like Mr. Incredible, somebody who is that similar type, but he doesn't have all these extra additional utility powers. He's just like that kind of guy who's working off strength, but he still kind of represents that symbol of like your unified, all, how should I say it? Boy Scout kind of person. Then your soldier type is actually a little bit more like your Captain America type. He's not necessarily super powerful. He's more on that level, but he still is the representation of that kind of, symbol. And then it breaks down also too for certain categories, for certain characters that might need a little bit more help in understanding how to play them, there's italics on how to play them. So someone like the Paragon, you don't really need help in understanding that. So it just gives you a breakdown of who they are. Like it'll say the non-caped Paragon is a bit more simplified. This is referring to the non-cape, the one who I said is similar to like Mr. Incredible, usually only having super strength, super durability. The non-caped Paragon may have small additional abilities like being able to jump a few 100 feet or run a bit faster than a normal man, but in general does not have crazy or extreme additional abilities. And so that's like a breakdown of who they are, what they are. But when you go into things like the non-caped Paragon, being that he's a little more close to human level, the italics here represents how in-game you would play him. So it's almost like the creators talking to you to let you know, hey, this is a little tip. And it says for here, the soldier build may appear not much more than your average crime fighter when we go into the crime fighter build, but it actually is a lot more powerful in actual gameplay. In street level game, the soldier can actually take on 2 to 3 regular guys at once, though not if they are heavily armed. You can choose to arm the soldier build with guns as well, but his physical build is more than enough to take on your average guy with a gun. And essentially, that's kind of letting you know that if someone's unarmed, they're going hand to hand, fist to fist with you. The soldier Paragon is, with a healing factor, his basic healing factor and his strength, whatever, will be able to put down like 2 to 3 guys by himself without a problem. Then you have obviously your crime fighter, and it goes into that basics description as well there too. We're actually running out of power on my camera, so I want to rush through this real quick. We have the archetype for the gun-toting crime fighter, the archer crime fighter. Then you have the warrior, which his subcategory goes into warrior god, and we go into warrior guardian, and the difference between the two. You go into the brick, which is your strong guy. You have the altered form who changes. You have your powerhouse who obviously is just, who doesn't change. He's just always that form. You have the blaster type who goes into glass cannon, and you have your energy manipulator who is kind of more like well-rounded and has other abilities as well. The armor suit, which is like your typical armor suit wearing person. You have the universal armor, but you also have your agile armor if you want him to be one of those kind of guys who doesn't have rocket boosters and this and that. Maybe he has non-organic webbing and he's flipping around and whatnot. You also have the powerhouse armor, which makes him like a powerhouse. You have the magic user, which breaks down into your general term, which is sorcerer. You also have another form of the sorcerer, which is the necromancer, if you want to build them like that with things like resurrection and whatnot like that. You have your occult detective, which is its own separate category from sorcerer. And then you have sage, which is another category. Now, like I said, these are just general names. You can make your guy however you want. They don't have to follow this, but these are just archetypes. Sage, which is a lot more powerful, kind of almost like a could be semi-cosmic level, but just represents like just a higher level of power. Almost like your Odin, for lack of a better word. I don't want to be referencing too many characters, but you're robotic, which can break down into either a robot or it can break down into a cyborg, however which one you want to have. And there's actually different rules to a cyborg versus a robot. A robot's not vulnerable to mental capabilities, but a cyborg is. Shapeshifter, which can be your general shifter category, which can break down to a shapeshifter, which is somebody who changes who they are in terms of like what they look like, whatnot. Size shifter, which can change into a different size, and you combine the power of your size growth, the power growth, with shapeshifting to start having different forms. Like you want to be a dragon, you got to have both powers of growth and shapeshifter to do something like that. But just shapeshifter alone, you're going to transform to something similar to your own size, like maybe like a cheetah or something like that, human size and weight and something like that. Refer to your game master in terms of what it'll let you do. And this in Shapeshifter, Size Shifter gives you a quick reference to, the general sizes and how that works as a quick reference. Like, okay, that's what I would be looking at in size. So if you go from growth 1 from your basic, and I put a height and weight here, just kind of give a starting point, 6 feet, 180 pounds. If you have growth one level of growth, rank of growth, you'd be 12 feet and 1,440 pounds. Growth 2 will be 24 feet and 5.76 tons. So there's a certain level progression to it. Within the power, it breaks it down for you, but that's a quick reference so you know where you're at. And then the other form of shifter is stretcher, because that's a form of a shifter too. So the shifter you could think of in different ways, whether shape shifting, growth, size shifting, or even stretchy. I would call that a shifter because you're shifting your body. And obviously, you would break that down, and it gives a little description on that. You have your speedster, and you only got kind of really one form of the speedster. But one thing I want to note in the power section, and I read it here in the in-game, the at-a-game kind of reference to let you kind of know, as the creator speaking to you, is that the primary ability of the speedster is super fast perception, and that kind of really encompasses that sense of what the speedster has, different from just a regular person having all their other abilities. And when you read up in it, you'll understand. The mentalist, which is the telepathic power mind, and then the telepathic battle mind, which is kind of saying like you can move things with your mind. No, I'm sorry. Telepathic means like you're affecting things directly with your mind. So either you're doing mind blast, and you're the type of person who just hits them in their mind directly, or the battle version is more like I make psychic, maybe swords around my hand, and I'm going into hand-to-hand combat with you with those abilities. We know that certain Marvel characters have made characters like that. There we go, saying those words again. But yes, and you could play it like that. And the same thing for the telekinetic, where you have either you're moving things with your mind, or maybe you're making telekinetic barriers around your fist and you're going into battle with someone like that. So that's where you have the telekinetic battle mind, and it breaks it down too. And those are all the archetypes. House rules goes into things like distance and how that affects how you play your turns. Someone might be 2 turns away. So if you have range, the benefit of range is not like it's a grid system, but the game master might say that guy's 2 turns away from you. So you get to spend all your actions in your turns shooting that person, and they're not going to reach you into 2 turns. So that's how that breaks down, and you can read it here. Things like group attacks, and these are, like I said, house rules. So you don't have to use them if you think it's going to be too complicated, but group attacks, how that works, dual wielding, the positive and negatives to that, in terms of dual wielding guns, large objects and how you incorporate that into like a weapon form. If you just randomly grab a large object like a car, it all goes into a catch of one kind of category, which is like a D20, as terms of weapon damage. Game tips, these kind of help you sort out certain things that you might not be aware of or sure of in terms of what is normal healing for a superhero. The standard healing is like a D4. How can I purchase fast swimming? Just use the same cost as you would for running in place of swimming, but in terms of for swimming. So little things like that kind of break down like how you would utilize certain rules. My battery's about to run out, so I'm pretty much almost done. Now you're ready to play, and that just lets you know, hey, you're ready to jump into the world. And so that's it, a quick run through of the entire game. So like I said, I'm going to put the where to purchase, the link to purchase in the description. This was a preview, even though I went through everything in the game. Why? Because a review would be saying to you what your thoughts are on it. And like I said, this is not the complete finished version. It's almost a complete finished version, but there are a couple updates. And so this is a preview. There will be a review later on. Obviously, the review is not going to be as long, because at that point, I'm just kind of letting you know my thoughts on everything and whatever the case is, the pros and cons of the system, because I'm going to be very objective with that and kind of really let you guys know what I think. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed. This is the Free Play RPG. Please purchase this. Recommend it to your friends. Recommend it to anybody that you know who is into tabletop RPGs. I think that this is the next step in RPG in terms of something very simple to get people into tabletop RPGs that never went into it before, because it's very simple, and that's the objective of this game. But we're going to get into that kind of stuff into the review and the purpose of it all. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this preview, and thanks you guys for checking it out. Thank you guys for coming to the channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.